Hi you guys, welcome back. My name is Carrie Penny. I am the Happy Crafty Homemaker and welcome to the latest crafty chat. So as the title suggests, this is kind of an amalgamation of thoughts and ideas to kind of guide you from hat into sock. So if you are already familiar with my how to approach knitting as a crocheter video, this is going to be very similar to that in that this is just kind of a loose combination of tips and tricks to prepare your mind to make socks. This isn't a tutorial on socks. There will be some patterns mentioned, but no way, shape, or form is this to teach you how to make socks. This is only a video to kind of help inform your mind in how to approach socks. So sit back, relax, chill, and I'm gonna be dropping some tips and tricks. I mean, get your warm caffeinated beverage or cool caffeinated beverage ready. Or if it's 2 a.m., I really hope you're having some like chamomile tea or something. Anyway, I have 2 pages of notes kind of here, plus a couple of extra things having to do with this in here. So, first off, you are not going to knit your perfect sock the first time out of the gate, most likely. I'm not saying it hasn't happened. I'm not saying that it cannot happen. Odds are on your first pair of socks is going to be some combination of a learning experience and terror as far as knitting goes. And it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be scary to knit socks. I think as with things like Y-seams and quilting, we kind of psych ourselves up for things like socks when really they're not that hard. They're multi-directional knitting and you do kind of have to frame the phases of knitting a sock differently. It's not like knitting a tube and cinching it closed somehow. There are new things you're going to learn more than likely. And I hate when people say you need to feel like an intermediate knitter before you try knitting socks, because truthfully, if you're adventurous, willing to take it slow and pace yourself, and you know you're going to be stretching and learning new things, socks are fine. I mean, one of the like 5th or 6th project types I tried was a pair of socks. Now, I botched it. And then I came back and my second pair of socks were these. So these are the Monkey Socks by Cookie A. And this is using Lion Brand Woolies Generation 1. So there's now, or Sockies. So at the time, this was called Woolly Sock. And if I can get the ball out, it was the color Blue Mist. This is the worsted weight version of it. But Woolly Sock, I believe, was like 75-25 wool and nylon. It's got more wool in it than Woolies does, but less wool in it than a normal sock yarn. We'll get to that. This was a success. And I do have a pair of these. I wear these all the time. They're very, very well loved. You can see that there were, while we're not running thin, we have some nubbles there. But as much as I still wear these socks, these are not my perfect socks. I have since translated into making more short row heels and round toes versus wedge toes. So this is actually a wedge toe. These have a round toe. It's a slightly shorter toe and it's just more rounded versus angular. That's it. There are many different heels and toes you're going to come across. And that kind of brings me to the first talking point. Knowing your sock anatomy is something that's really going to help you understand a lot of what I'm about to say and what I've already said, and things you're going to hear as you're reading patterns or as you're moving into community, listening to other YouTube creators who make socks. You need to know your sock anatomy. So we're going to use this as an example because it actually kind of visually is a little bit easier to see. So you can see here, this area here, obviously that's your toe. That's where your toes go. This is your heel. This is obvious because that is where your heel goes. This is the leg and cuff, and this is the foot. So there are like 500 different combinations of heels and toes you can do for socks. This is an afterthought heel. So basically I knit a long tube and closed off the toe. Or I started with the toe and worked all the way up to the cuff. I'm not sure which direction I did these in. But I literally cut open a line, picked up the live stitches from the top and the bottom, and decreased down to the edge of my heel. So if you were making a cardigan in the round that you then open up and pick up stitches here, that's called steeking. So basically I steeked open my heel to insert it. There's also something called a peasant heel where you'll put in an artificial row of stitches that you're just going to take out, leaving you with the live stitches on the top and the bottom. You have a standard heel flap and gusset. This is a little bit easier to see than my monkey socks, but only ever so a little bit. What you do here is you're going to knit down in a flap, pick up stitches, or you're going to pick up these stitches, and then you're going to decrease down this line. This is your gusset line. So you get a heel flap and a gusset. And what this does is it's going to drop down to the heel. You need it to be a little bit wider here so you can A, get the sock on, but B, have space for your ankle and your heel in the same tube. And then you're going to decrease down to your foot size and continue knitting, once again, toe up or cuff down. But knowing your sock anatomy, knowing that you have 20 different toes and 500 different heels to choose from, that's why you're probably not going to pick your first all-time bestest sock for your very first sock. Even though they're perfectly wearable, they're not going to be perfect, and that's okay. You are opening up an entire new world of exploration into yourself. So these are, by the way, the Frenzy socks. I don't know how well that lace pattern's showing up, but this is another Harry Potter inspired pattern. I've been knitting the Hermione Everyday socks recently, which are a beautiful tried and true pattern. But knowing your sock anatomy so you can understand the parts of your pattern, many are written either toe up or cuff down. And you're going to see sections that are titled cuff, heel, leg, pattern stitches, things like that. So there's, while they're not hard to understand words, your pattern will more than likely be structured slightly differently, and particularly if it's a very well written pattern. Just saying. Second note is it'll take a few different toes and heels to find your perfect match for your foot. Already covered. But it will. I mean, right now, for me, the short row heel seems to be the best, and the round toe seems to work out pretty well for me. I want to do some playing with the anatomical toes, just because my toe slant is a perfect line. So I think I might actually get a slightly better fit with an anatomical toe, but that's something I'll worry about tomorrow. But once again, many different toes to choose from, many different heels to choose from. There is no wrong choice. This is, once again, think of it as you are mixing and matching parts to get your perfect fit. For your first pattern, pick a tried and true pattern. If you're feeling adventurous and are willing to be patient with yourself, might I suggest purchasing the pattern Sock Exploration by Earth Tone Girls, and also following along as you're knitting from the pattern, her broken down videos of how to knit these socks. So I'm going to leave her tagged, and I will leave the Sock Exploration pattern down below. Denise is a brilliant teacher when it comes to teaching short row heels. So her variation on this is the shadow wrap heel. It is very visible as you're working it. You can really see where the turning points are. She really spends a lot of time showing you what you need instead of just telling you what you need. So if you're an auditory learner, she does a beautiful job verbally explaining. If you're a visual learner, she's got it all right there. If you're a kinesthetic learner, you can literally pair your hands with hers to make sure that you are following along appropriately. So I'll be honest, it's an excellent, excellent resource. I cannot believe she did that entire video series and offered it up for free, because it is that good. Like, it would be worth paying money for, which is why I purchased the pattern, because it's kind of like a thank you for the video series, which makes it easier when I just need to hear something real quick. And even I still follow along with her a lot, but this heel is the shadow wrap heel. This is how this is going to look. It's a short row heel. It gives a very similar effect to the afterthought heel, just slightly different. Here you can see where you're doing a standard decrease. Here it is a slips short row. So you're once again knitting in dimensions, which is a lot of why I think we're afraid. There's a lot of words in a sock knitting pattern. Following along for socks, there are a lot of words, and a lot of it is because you have to knit a tube, then find a way to U-bend your tube. And creating this heel, however you do it, this creates more words than I think a lot of us initially are comfortable with experiencing the first time. But truthfully, all you're doing is knitting a tube. You just need to put a bend into the tube. There is no reason as a knitter, even if you've only knit a couple of scarves, dishcloths, and a hat, you should necessarily be afraid of trying a sock. I promise you, we all made mistakes doing it. We will all continue to make mistakes. One of the ladies in Ravelry just closed her toe the wrong way. Instead of closing it horizontal, she closed it vertical. She's like, I've made 200 socks. How am I still doing this? I did that for my first sock. That was the big bogey on that sock. Like, trust me, we will all make mistakes, and it's okay. We just need to be prepared for the fact that that's a possibility. We're learning something new. And in learning something new, we need to be patient with ourselves learning it. So you've picked a tried and true pattern. You've picked the Hermione Everyday socks, the monkey socks, the Sock Exploration socks, the Stringle Light socks. You've picked your sock. What are you knitting your sock with this time? So we have different options for how we're going to knit our sock, what we're going to knit our sock with. So you can knit them with double pointed needles or DPNs. You can knit them with 9-inch circulars. You can knit them with 2 needles, circular needles. I generally prefer a 24 or a 32-inch circular, 2 circular needles, and kind of do a faux magic loop, or you can do a magic loop. You can do them 1 at a time or 2 at a time. It's up to you. And most patterns, once you've knit your first pair, once you've knit your first sock, not even your first full pair, if you understand the basic construction of what you did to make that very first sock, you will be able to experiment completely how you want to. And you know, I'm going to be honest, what I've been favoring recently is toe up 2 at a time on magic loop. But 2 months ago, I knit a pair of socks in May that were done on 2 knitting needles held in parallel just like I was doing magic loop, just on 2 needles instead of 1. But this is a 40-inch circular needle. And these are my toes. These are my going to be my atomic strawberry lemonade socks. And I'm doing these magic loop. I have knit on DPNs. I have knit on magic loop. I've knit 2 at a time. I've even used 9-inch circulars. This is what I'm favoring right now. That doesn't mean that I won't one day go back to a 9-inch circular if I can ever get my fingers more comfortable using the 9-inch circular. That doesn't mean that if I get a hair and I can't find a 40-inch that I won't use 2 needles again. I might not use double points again just because that's not my favorite way to go. It's really not my favorite way to go, but there's nothing wrong with using DPNs. These were knit on DPNs. These were knit on DPNs. These were knit 10 years ago. These were knit 12 years ago, I believe. Or maybe it was 10 and 8 years ago. It's kind of hard to remember. When Pope Francis was elected to the papacy that day, this is the sock I was working on. It's weird how you can associate things like that, but yeah. So, and these were knit 2 years prior to that. But yeah, these were done on double points. This pair was done on magic loop 2 at a time. And these may have been on 9-inch circulars, or these were done on 2 needles. I don't think I used magic loop for these. I think at the time I may have really been trying to make the 9-inch circular thing work for me. Sorry about that. If you were going to use DPNs, I'm going to make a suggestion that I normally don't feel the need to make. Get a DPN holder. So you're going to set these socks down at some point. It's not for while you knit them. You're going to set these down at some point. And there's multiple different variations. There's tubes that you can just kind of slide over your project and around your needles that kind of together. There's little plastic coils that you can coil up your needle tips with and just collapse it and coil your needles together. There's little fabric snappy bags. They're thin rectangles, and you can just snap those over your needles and let your project hang out through the hole. Whatever variation you choose as a DPN holder, I'm not going to say that it's a must. I would highly encourage it though, because you will set these socks down, and for some reason, I've never had DPNs fall out of a hat, out of a sleeve, out of a baby sweater. I've had more needles fall out of my socks than any other project. So might I make that slight recommendation? If you were going to do the 2 needles at a time or magic loop, on your second stitch, just kind of that up a little bit when you're changing needle to needle. You don't need to draw that first stitch extra hard. You can give it a little soft tug, but on the second stitch, give it a little extra on that tension, and that will prevent laddering. You can do the same thing with DPNs. For me, laddering on DPNs was not a horrible problem. I had far more laddering using magic loop and getting used to that. Laddering is when your stitches are loose, so you can see the bar between your stitches more than you normally would. It's a gauge thing, and you're throwing off your tension and gauge when you're switching between those 2 needles. So just on that second stitch, give it a little extra zhuzh on your tensioning on the needle, and you should be fine. You shouldn't have any laddering. Same thing works with your DPNs, but definitely when you're doing magic loop or the 2 knitting needles that will give you the... I wish I had something I was working on that was like that, but you're just using a front needle and a back needle when you use 2 needles to create the circular. So you can make your sock toe up or cuff down. There's no right or wrong way to do this. Once again, it's a preference thing. If you do your sock toe up, the huge advantage is you can maximize your decorative yarn. So when you're going toe up, the important part that you have to have a sock is done. So you can make the leg part of your sock as long as you want to without running out of yarn. Especially if you're doing 2 at a time, you don't have to worry about running out of the yarn because you'll still have a sock if it ends here or if it ends here. But if your sock yarn, if you're working on this way and your sock yarn ends here, you don't have socks. You can't finish them unless you bring in an extra yarn. Now, like in this case, I did bring in a different yarn for the heel. You can do that for decorative purposes, or also if you're darning or just want to replace the heel in a sock, you can rip these stitches out, catch the live stitches, and put a new heel in using the afterthought method. More information than you probably needed in this section, but there we go. If you do your socks cuff down, one of the things you will have to do is closing your toe. So you can see here, now I've only used one method. I have been told there's at least 4 different methods for this to give you a seamless, secure closure. I have only used Kitchener stitch to close up socks. So when I got done doing my decreases, I was left with this 10 stitches here. I think it's 10. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I went really tiny for this one. So this 9 stitches here were left wide open. There was a hole here. So literally I took my needle and sewed into the stitches in the same looping pattern as the knit stitches to close up that toe. There are videos on Kitchener stitch. I will try to remember to leave the link down in the description box down below for the dog earless Kitchener stitch. And basically it's just changing your beginning a little bit so you don't get dog ears. I don't know if you can tell where that peaks there a little bit. And we got a little bit on this toe too. When you wear them, you can't really tell as much. Generally, there's a loopy bit there. What I had done, especially when I was an early knitter, is I would kind of really sew those down. But I ended up over tightening my toes just a little bit. So the toe on this doesn't stretch too much. There's a little stretch in the middle there, but here it doesn't stretch too much because I did that. Don't recommend it. But there are other methods of grafting. As with the fact there are multiple different heels and toes, there are different ways of grafting your toes shut. When you're casting off, if you do toe up, there's, once again, 500 different methods. I will leave my 2 preferred ones down below, but I will say, if you have a very unyielding, chunky calf, and these are going to come up onto your calf and maybe feel a little bit snug, I would recommend a sewn bind off. It's a pain in the butt, but the sewn bind off is going to give you the best combination in that case. I don't normally take my socks up that high, but this is what I have to do if I take mine up to where they're calf height. You want something stable so when you take your sock off, it will contract back with your ribbing stitches, but you want something loosey-goosey enough that it can stretch and not like cut off circulation in your calf. Might I recommend one of the sewn bind off, stretchy bind offs for that case, that one particular case if you have chunky, unyielding calf muscles or calves in general. Just in my experience, try the Judy Surprisingly Stretchy Bind Off. It's fine. Try that and then try it compared to the sewn bind off and leave a comment down below as to what you think on that case works the best for keeping your sock up, keeping your sock in a good shape, and also being comfortable to wear long term. It's a combination, an intersection point that's very difficult, but I still think the sewn bind off is better. in that one case. But Judy's is amazing, and there's another bind off that I do use frequently for socks that I will leave down below. Make notes as you knit socks. Notes that you will actually find and access. So if you're one of those brilliant people who can be project monogamous and not have 15 different projects going on, or you have like one pair of socks you're working on at a time. So you have one bag you keep your sock in, or one basket you keep your socks in. Put a little notepad in there with your sock notes. If you are multi-project and multi-bag and you may have like 15 pairs of socks cast on at any one time, I'm not that bad. I only have 4 cast on right now. I need to cast on 2 more tomorrow. But, I might have a problem. But, take notes. When you finish your first couple pairs of socks and you're trying different heels and toes and bind off methods and grafting methods, take notes about what you think about what the experience was. What is the fit? How do they wear? The first time you wear them after soaking them and washing them, come back to that notebook and be like, the afterthought heel is great, but I don't like this, or I do like this, or I wish it did this. And make sure you're taking notes in a place that you will see them while working on socks, so you can really remind yourself of what is working for you and what is not working for you. You want these to work for you. And as you start making socks for your family members, do the same thing. This works in my fingering weight. This does not work in my DK weight. I really like the fit of this toe, but I wish it had this bind off or this cast on it. Make those notes for yourself and put them in a place where you will see them. Organize them in a way that you will access them and have access to them as you're making socks or planning your next sock pattern or your next sock journey, because this is something that will really help you to find your perfect custom fit for yourself. And it'll also help you decide, what do you like using while making socks? You may discover you don't like socks, and that's fine too. I just went through a 3-year hiatus of knitting socks. I cast on some in 2021. I just finished those socks in 2024. And I just stalled out on socks completely because I could not get these socks done. So give yourself a place where you can collect all those thoughts in one spot and refresh your memory on what works for you or the recipient. Like, I know a lot of people knit for like their moms in particular, and their moms will be like, yeah, it's a little baggy at the heel. Can we tighten that in a little bit? Or I need my toe just a little bit wider. Can we kind of like a little bit? That feedback's great. Make those notes and make sure you put this in a place you will see it as you're planning your next pair of socks. The accessibility to these reminders is going to be critical. Not that you're taking the notes, but your accessibility to the information will be. Where do I want to go next? So I'm going to take a break here, and we're going to talk about community. So if you're starting here, this is a great starting point. Welcome aboard. I am so glad you found this crafty chat. You need more of this. Not from me. You need more opinions and conversations and opinions of other people. I'm a great place to start. Look at it that way. Or if I'm the 5th place you started, you're doing good. Keep going. There's somebody else who has some more nuggets for you. Trust me. I don't know it all. I will never know it all when it comes to socks. I won't know it all when it comes to knitting. I've been crocheting for over 35 years now. I still don't know it all. So definitely cast your net wide. There are groups on Ravelry. There are groups on Threads. There are people who to engage with on Facebook and Instagram who are sock knitters. As you're scrolling through your feeds and you say, oh, that's awesome, ask the person about it. Most people like talking about their crafts. If you find a designer you really like when I started out, I was a huge fan of Cookie's patterns. I knit like 5 different pairs of Cookie socks. The monkey socks were the first ones. I did 2 different color work socks. One's a houndstooth pattern that I made way too short. I still wear them on occasion, but they don't fit very well, and I did a horrible job, but I still made them. I did another one that has a cable on the outside of the foot that I gifted to somebody. There's something else that I did, but I was huge, Cookie A when I, like I said, I can't remember if it was 10 years ago or 12 years ago when I made these, but I couldn't get enough of her. And I still think her patterns are brilliant and beautiful, and her socks are very well constructed, and there's something beautifully simple and artistic, and she loves playing with pattern. So she designs socks so she can incorporate patterns and learn new things and then incorporate them into larger garments. This is her test knitting for different textures and designs that she will then incorporate into other things. Take that tidbit. If you have a Stittionary and you're curious, how does this feel working this up? Knit a sock. If you're past wanting to do dishcloths, knit a sock. There is nothing wrong with that. I'm actually about to play with a couple of different things doing the same thing. I know what fits my foot. I know what works for my foot. I'm now ready to do more texture playing just on my own, not necessarily with a pattern. But when you're in these online groups, when you're talking and engaging with other knitters and crocheters, knitters in this case, they want to talk about their stuff. They want to talk about their process. They want to talk about the yarn they're using. They want to tell you all about their needles. I do the same thing. That's why I have a YouTube channel. Everything I say here is my thoughts and opinions, and I get to share them with up to 2,000 people a video sometimes. And to me, that seems like a huge amount of people who care about what I have to say, which is really terrifying, just to be honest. The introverted extrovert is like, what if I would lead somebody astray in the wrong direction? But having that community, it also gives you a place to ask questions when you run into a stumbling block, or you know there's got to be a thing out there, but you're not sure really necessarily even sometimes what the question is. I have a baggy ankle. Is my problem the number of stitches I'm using, the type of heel I'm using, or the shape? You don't really know what the question is, but there is somebody in a Facebook group who's going to have answers for you. Trust me. Trust me. It is great to build community. It's one of the reasons why in my approaching knitting as a crocheter video, I talked about seeing as many hands as possible working, because you're going to visually pick up on how people do things differently. I always struggled to weave in as I go in knitting, and I was just watching, it was Kay the Crazy Sock Lady and somebody else, and it's just, I was watching something else and it flipped to these videos. It wasn't something I had necessarily sought out. I'd just given up, but something clicked. And I'm trying to now practice more with weaving in as I go and using that more, because I'd really like to do more scrappy socks. I just hate ends. But having community, having people you're watching, having a place you can ask questions, you will learn more than any single video any creator can put up, any short any TikTok creator can put up, any photograph, meme, or article in a blog. That community, you are getting years of experience in one place that is free advice. So I recommend getting community, even if it's coming into videos like this, asking a question. And my community in particular, my community responds to each other in the comment section. I'm so small, I can actually reply to most comments that I get on my videos. So, you know, we have community here, but like I have a Facebook group. So if you have a problem, you can come into the Facebook group and say, hey, I'm not understanding Kitchener. And what am I missing? And you will have 15 different people who will ask you really what your problem is and help you identify what your problem is and say, hey, here, let me fill my hands real quick so you can see this. And they'll share with you. It is phenomenal. Community, community, community. It comes in different forms, but it's very important as you are learning a new skill. And socks, like I said, we perceive these as being super intimidating, even though they're not. So, we took a break for community. It's not really necessarily about sock knitting. This goes for any knitting, any crochet, anything you're making and doing. Community will definitely help you out substantially. Where do I want to go next? We're going to talk about an unfriendly one next. Second sock syndrome is a real problem. Not everybody has it. Not everybody gets it. But if you knit a sock once, a lot of times it's a struggle to get that second sock done. And you will hear reference to second sock syndrome all the time. I am a grave sufferer of, I hate repeating things. There'll be an occasional, like I make 4 shawls and then I am done with that pattern. I tap out. There are other creators who can make 100 of them and still want to make another 100. So this isn't something that's going to hamper everybody. But if you do find it is a struggle, once you're comfortable knitting socks and it's not stretching you or making you think quite as often, and you're starting to struggle getting that second sock done, it might be time to move on to 2 at a time. You can do 2 at a time with the 2 needles or 2 at a time on magic loop like I do. You get both socks done at the same time. You don't end up with second sock syndrome. I have a sock that I knit probably 12 years ago. It's probably one of the pairs I started right after this. It's called the Dark Owl sock. It is gorgeous. I was knitting it in garnet black. It was beautiful. I knit one and I still don't have the second sock. I probably never will. I do still want to go back and reknit that pattern at some point, but yeah. Nope. So just listen to yourself. Listen to how you're feeling about it. Listen to how you're moving through the process. If you're struggling with that second sock, my suggestion would be 2 at a time. It'll be a little fidgety and cumbersome to start doing 2 at a time, just because what you're used to being 1 round is now double the amount of time because you're doing both socks at the same time. But you will have both socks and you won't stall out on a project. There is something devastating to me when you just straight stall on a project, like me stalling on socks for 4 years. It's hard to overcome. So these are 2 that kind of go together. I'm going to start off by saying your socks will wear out. And you're going to have to learn how to darn socks. And socks that you make, I generally leave a tag in there that's like, if it's another knitter that I've gifted socks to, I just send them with a ball of the yarn and say, here's your darning yarn. If it's a non-knitter, like when I send something to my mom, I generally say, send them back to me and I will darn them. But they will wear out. And this is part of also learning your heels in particular, but heels and toes. If the back of your heel rubs in the shoes you wear a lot, you're going to wear through your heel first. If your toes are doing this inside your shoes, which mine do a lot, you might wear your toes out a little bit faster. You may just, for me, the normal spot to wear out is actually here. I do have some socks that I wear more than I've worn these, that the ball of the foot looks a little smashed. I don't think these are bad either. I didn't wear these a whole lot till last year. These are using Peyton's Croy. And this does, I would recommend this as a first sock yarn because this does hold up very well. And it's stickier, so you have a little bit of an easier time working with it for your first tiny yarn on socks. But yeah, you can still see there's a little bit extra wear here. For me, that's where the wear space tends to be. I've knit enough socks that so far in my sock drawer, I don't have anything I've had to darn or replace a heel on. But you will eventually have to learn, I will have to learn the skill of repairing socks. And that's part of the beauty of the socks. The sock, handmade sock, these are meant to be repaired. These are repairable. And it's cost effective to repair these, especially if we've made them ourselves, because we have our leftover yarns for the projects that we can tuck away and just say, okay, this is my darning container of yarn. And I've done that with some things. I do actually have a little paper bag somewhere that has like 5 balls of yarn that used to be my most common yarns to use for these kinds of projects. I had made mittens and gloves out of some of them too. Fingertips needed to be darned on those eventually, or will be. But these are, I think it was Stephanie McPhee said, socks are one of the greatest acts of love you can knit for somebody because they're meant to be worn out. And they will have to be repaired. It's a gift that keeps on giving. You continue to give in the process of gifting hand knit socks. You continue to gift that person. And I think that's a very sweet way to look at the lifespan of a sock and what that sock will go through, because we tend to be hard on socks and they will wear out much quicker than, say, a sweater that we knit somebody that will be very tenderly cared for. Socks go in shoes. We do work in our socked feet. So these will wear out. And I love the idea of that is a great act of love that keeps on giving. It's the gift that keeps on giving over and over and over again. You get to keep gifting to that loved one. So if somebody's sock worthy, it's somebody you want to continue to give the same gift to over and over again. And I just think that's kind of lovely. I think of shawls as hugs when you can't be present with somebody. To continue giving of yourself and your time in this gift to somebody, I think is sweet. But that does bring me to the next thing, which is picking a sock yarn. We are already like 45 minutes in, and I'm incredibly sorry, but these crafty chats do tend to run long. We're almost done though. We're almost in the home stretch, you guys. We're almost there. But sock yarn, the yarn you choose will be important. Most people are going to tell you you want at least 15% nylon and the rest wool. Up to a 25% nylon, 75% wool blend. I think for what most of us are going to find inexpensively on the reg, that is true. There are other options, however, and I kind of want to quickly spotlight some of this. So if you have a highly twisted, something like, say, a BFL that is a very durable wool, 100% wool will hold up. You're going to want something that's very, very tightly twisted though. You want a high twist fiber for that, because as you rub against it, that twist is going to prevent the yarn from wearing through. And that's one of the problems you have with something softer, like say an Angora or a cashmere. As you walk and move up against that, it's not just going to pill like a sweater. You're actually going to wear a hole into that fabric much, much, much quicker. There are certain fibers where I know people have knit socks and they've literally kind of disintegrated in the first 2 or 3 wears. And that's because they use something particularly delicate. That's why the nylon is important in sock yarn. That's why you see a lot of superwash wool, merino wool, whatever it is, mixed with nylon superwash so you can throw them in the washing machine. I don't machine wash anything I hand knit or crochet. If I do, I put it on delicate only with cold light cleaner. I do use Molly Suds stuff, which is a it's not a laundry soap like my laundry soap, but it's different. It's not as hard on things like wool, but I have a non-agitator washer. Occasionally, I might put something in on delicate. I may or may not put a detergent or soap in there with it. I may just use it for like a rinse and spin cycle. I tend to, like right now it's 101 degrees here. I don't wear socks this time of year. It's between 91 and 101. And our heat index is between 100 and 110. So that's, I think somebody else said the high end of that is 38.2 degrees Celsius on the heat index or the temperature there. Yeah, I don't wear socks this time of year. I wear a lot of sandals, flip-flops, and Birkenstocks for me. But I do, in the winter and fall, keep a bucket somewhere in the laundry room or in the bedroom by the laundry basket or in the bathroom. It just kind of depends on where I set my little bucket. But it's just like a little mop bucket. And I drop my socks in there. I take it to the laundry room. I do have a sink in there. Fill it up with some water. Drop some soak in there. Let the socks just sit for a couple hours. I might take my hands and kind of lightly agitate just to make sure everything's getting good and clean. I want to make sure all of your feet get off. Rinse. And then I just lay them flat to dry. So these don't look horrible off my little foot blocker thing, but you can tell I do not block my socks to dry them. I ain't got time for that. And there are certain weeks where I would have had to have 20 different blockers. It just ain't going to happen. So I don't necessarily think you need to block your socks. Maybe the first time you wash them, but really your foot's going to stretch it out pretty well. You don't need a blocker. Unless you just want to. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to. If you're extra, that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But you can see just putting this on a slightly smaller foot form than I have. All that lace pattern is opened up there. It's stretched open by your leg and foot when you put it on. Not necessary. So, you know, a high twist BFL would be perfectly fine. There are a couple, I think BFL and something else are both very durable. And you can get sock yarns that are high twist, dense, so you're not gonna. Anyway, nylon and wool is going to be something that is your common thing. You want at least 15% nylon in your wool. Two other things with that. There are wool-free sock yarns. So if you do have a natural animal fiber problem, allergy, irritation, whatever it is, number one, make sure you have an allergy to it and it's not just cheap wool. There are cheap wools out there that make me itch. Then there are nice, beautiful, smooth, easy to work with, easy to wear superwash merinos that, I mean, I could run around in the humid southeast with something made out of this all day, every day, and be perfectly content as a bug in a rug. So double check and make sure it is an allergy, because socks come with certain complications when you get to the non-animal fiber realm. So a 100% acrylic sock, you need to be very careful. It never goes in a dryer, because as soon as that sock goes into the dryer, the steam is going to block your sock. It's the same reason when I say I steam block my acrylic things and then never wash them in a machine. Acrylic permanently blocks with steam. So maintaining a sock that is 100% acrylic, you need to make sure it never gets steamed. So it can never go in the dryer whatsoever. No ifs, ands, buts, or coconuts. Do not put 100% acrylic socks into the dryer. Now, if you have a small acrylic content like these guys, it's going to make it pill more. It's going to wear quicker. But theoretically, yes, I can put this into... And acrylic is not as durable as nylon is for heat and wear. It breaks down just a little bit quicker. And in something like socks, or once again, you're getting a lot of this. It's not even necessarily a side-to-side brushing. A lot of it is a very circular brushing. So you're going to be going with some stitches and against some stitches. You're going to be going with some plies. You're going to be going against some plies. And that is going to create an uneven wear spot, which can create this entire circle here straight out. Not just like a split somewhere, but the entire center can wear through. Acrylic is fine. I do have some 100% acrylic socks. I like them. They're not my favoriteest. Now, the last one I'm going to talk about, the comments I'm going to make are not from my personal experience. It is from talking to people who have used it. So in the last 10 years, we've seen a huge resurgence of interesting cotton fibers. And one of the things we have seen is cotton with elastin, cotton with nylon, cotton with some combination of elastin and nylon. There's another one where I think it's one of the Peyton's ones actually. It's like Peyton Croy cotton or something. The way it's plied creates a lot of stretch in the yarn. I believe Mary Maxim has also played with this, and Premier has played with this. Using cotton acrylic, cotton nylon, cotton and elastic, some combination of these with that to create stretch in the yarn, and it will be a fingering weight yarn. Some of them are marketed to be socks that are 50% or higher cotton. Now, I have used some of these to make shawls, and they work up beautifully. Hands down, gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous shawls. For socks, a lot of the people I have talked to have said you have to be very careful when you go to dry them. You lay them out flat to dry and stretch them more long ways and make sure your top ribbing is really, really stretched tall. They lose their shape fairly quickly as you're wearing them, and if you don't properly shape them flat when they're drying, you might find your socks falling off your feet. That is not something I've used. I do have a couple that I want to use eventually, but I have not used these for socks. But knowing the nature of cotton, I believe them, so I thought it was worth mentioning. There are cotton-based sock yarns out here, but you do have to, just like the acrylic, use some you have to be aware of the nature of the fiber as you're working with them. Maybe that's a nice way to put it. It's not that it's problematic, but you need to be aware of what it is you're working with and how that's going to translate into the long time use of these. So I would definitely experiment. When you're experimenting with your toes and your heels, once you kind of find a rhythm of something like that that you like, a shape that you like, then start playing with your fibers. I would definitely start out though with some form of a superwash wool, merino wool, whatever it says. Excuse me. I do particularly like Peyton's Croy for a nice beginner sock. They come in some great colors. The striping that's in a lot of them encourages you to play with it. And you do get, it's a plusher sock yarn. So you do get good stitch definition. They make squishy socks. They're very durable. It's not the most exciting yarn in the world, but I do recommend that as a good starting spot. And the wool is a durable wool, so it is, when you're working with it, slightly itchy, but I will be honest, as soon as you soak these, they soften up significantly, and they're so pleasant to wear. They really, and you can make boot socks with these as well as dress socks. And then from there, play. But there's some amazing yarns out there to make socks with. That's just like one easy to access recommendation. I could not even start to give you a list of things that I think make good socks because they're just too many. All right, so the last thing is, all right, I've heard what you've said. I've listened to some other people and what they've said. I know how to do this. I am ready. I'm going to take on the challenge. Let's go. Where do I start? If you are still actually scared and terrified that you're not sure you can see what you're doing, find a Christmas stocking pattern that looks like a regular sock. Look at the pattern, and if it has you turning a heel, if they use the phrase to turn the heel at any point in this pattern, and I'll try to find one or two to leave in the description box down below as well. Try a Christmas stocking. It's just a really big sock. Try a Christmas stocking. If you feel ready to just go ahead and go bloop, try some bed socks. For bed socks, lounge socks, you don't need to use any special fiber other than something you think is going to feel good on your feet. My first ones were made with standard woolies, and they're great. I mean, I still have those too. Those probably show the most wear just because standard woolies is 75% acrylic, 25% wool, and the acrylic has kind of mashed and it's not looking, new anymore. But bed socks or lounge socks is a great place to just use worsted weight. You can also start off with some DK weight socks. That's fine too. There are plenty of vanilla DK weight socks patterns out there. So if you want to do what you want to with them, you feel confident, you're on the go. You just need to know how to turn a heel and how to make a toe. Do that. But truthfully, you want a yarn that you can see very well. You want a pattern with really, really good directions. And you want a yarn weight you think you can see clearly and really see the moving parts. So like if you're doing a heel flap and gusset, you want to make sure you can really see those stitches that you're going to have to pick up on the edge of the flap. If you're doing a slip stitch or a shadow wrap heel, you really want to make sure that you can see where those groups of stitches become. It's going to be your visibility and comfort level, but to be honest, a worsted weight Christmas stocking is a great place to start. And I know a lot of children's charities take things like that during the holiday season to use for the gifts that they're giving. So it would also be potentially a donation item if you're like, it doesn't fit my decor, but somebody else might like it. Assuming you did a good enough job, making the stocking. It will give you the confidence to then move, to the worsted weight, to the DK weight, to the fingering weight. You can progress down like that. And it's one sock. If you're doing a Christmas stocking, you're just doing one sock. And the intention is for one sock. So there are advantages to this. You can also do, a Christmas stocking and a DK weight. I think there are actually more patterns for a DK weight Christmas stocking made like a sock than there are worsted weight. Worsted weight's just easier to see. But you don't even have to do that. If you're fully committed to doing this and you really want to be patient with yourself and you're willing to be patient with yourself, dive right into a standard pair of socks. I didn't know any of this information or have any idea what I was doing. And that's what I did. And it was my second pair that I messed up, not the first pair. So, I think. But anyway, it's really a choose your own mystery. It's a choose your own battle. I don't want you to feel like you can't. You're too new, you're too green, you're too young, you're too something. I don't want you to feel that way. It is challenging. It is something new. But doing your first cable pattern is something new. Making your first sweater is something new. Making your first dishcloth was something new. So you're just doing a new thing. And be patient with yourself. Once we feel like we have a mastery of a thing, we get so on ourselves as we're learning these new things. And that's really, I want you to have the tool set, the information to kind of give you a framework to build off of. To not feel that way about yourself, because this is a new thing. You're reading a new form of pattern, a new shape. Many of these have a different shape than a normal pattern we're used to seeing. Unless we've done like a large multi-directional, you know, like mosaic something. This will be a new thing, a new shape you're making and creating a tubular U. And that is awesome. You are expanding your ability. And if you're new, you're taking your knowledge from here to here in one project. And that's amazing. Just take it in little bites. And my final piece of advice, it's something I mention all the time. I frequently underutilize in my own practice. Use lifelines. If you're getting, like, say you've got your leg done and you're like, my leg looks awesome. I want my cuff and leg to stay just like this. I don't want to lose any of these stitches. Run a piece of dental floss through those stitches real quick on your needle. Tie a little bow. Make sure you know where your beginning stitch was. You know, put a little stitch marker in there so you know where the beginning of the round is. And if for some reason your heel fails, you can frog all the way back to your lifeline, put your needle back in, and start all over again. And it's okay. You didn't really lose anything. You learned things. When we make mistakes knitting, we are learning things. It's not that we've made mistakes that we can't fix. We are learning new things. There's always a learning experience in this to be had. So I love you guys. I really hope this was helpful. This was kind of what a number of you guys had asked for who are in the process of transitioning from hats to scarves or from hats to socks. So anyway, if you have any further questions, if there is something I did not mention in this video that you would also like to hear my opinion on or my community's opinion on, feel free to leave a comment down below in the comment section. Also, you can come and join the Facebook group as long as you answer all the questions. All the questions, not just one, all the questions. I will let you into the group and you can ask your question there and pose it to our brain trust within the Facebook group. You can send me a DM on Instagram. I will do my best to respond and answer quickly and give you my personal take on it. Thank you so much for helping me this mental transition of going from straight knitting to circular knitting, now into sock knitting. I hope you guys are having a wonderful, fantastic day. As always, I love you and I look forward to seeing you real soon. Bye, you guys.